If you don't recognise the car in front of me and you've landed on this video through some strange YouTube algorithm misfire, then you'll have seen in the title that it's a Lada Riva, and by now your mind will be recalling all sorts of old jokes from the 80s and 90s from when these cars were a common sight on our roads. But regale you with Lada jokes I won't, because having never experienced one and they've not really ever been on my radar, I want to find out what this piece of Eastern Bloc automotive nirvana is all about, and find out whether, instead of poking fun at it, we should now be recognising and celebrating the car as a bona fide classic car. So please do keep watching as we find out some history on the car, have a chat with the owner Nathan, and get it out on the road. I'm Craig and you're watching Craig on Cars. Would you believe me if I told you that somewhere deep beneath the Soviet steel on the surface is the 1967 car of the year? Yes, really. The Lada Riva, VAZ 2105, Dennis Signet, Lada Classic or otherwise badged depending on the market, was based on the Fiat 124, which itself was launched in 1966. There was even a Pininfarina Stahlsport Spider, so if the 124 was so widely acclaimed, how could its Soviet cousin be regarded as one of the worst cars ever made, and the butt of so many schoolyard jokes? Cue a very brief history of how Lada, or VAZ, came to be. Back in the 1960s, the Soviet Union realised it needed a large national auto manufacturer to satisfy the growing demand for personal mobility among its citizens, and recognising how the economies of Western powers were being fuelled by the automotive boom post-World War II. Foreign help was needed, and by 1966 a deal was struck with the sympathetic socialist government in Italy and Fiat, whereby the newly released Fiat 124 would become the basis for a Soviet people's car that would be built in a new mega factory based in a city called Stavropol on the Volga River, the city swiftly being renamed Togliatti in honour of the Italian Communist Party leader who was instrumental in sealing the deal. While construction of the factory was underway, rigorous testing on the car began, and it was found that the existing Fiat 124 wasn't cut out to cope with the Soviet roads and local weather conditions. Many test cars' chassis would crack, suspension bushings would fail, and the modern Fiat disc brakes would clog up with sand, snow and ice. We can see where this is going. Among other changes, the disc brakes were replaced with aluminium drum brakes, the suspension softened and ride height increased, and the chassis was re-engineered with thicker steel and reinforced in key areas. Come 1970, the factory was complete and named the Volga Automobile Plant. VAZ was born, and the Soviet Union had its own national auto manufacturer. By 1973, 660,000 VAZ 2101s or Zigulis were being produced annually, and there were long domestic waiting lists after the Politburo realised that there was good money to be made in selling the car internationally, badged as Lada, and an update to the 2101 in 1979 resulted in the VAZ 2105 or Lada Riva, which we saw for the first time in the UK from 1983. More than 300,000 UK cars would be sold over the next 15 years, when Lada eventually exited the UK market in 1997 after stricter emissions regulations made it too costly to update the cars to comply. For such a widely panned vehicle, it is in fact the third best-selling car in the world after the VW Beetle and Ford Model T, with one of the world's longest production runs across all platforms, 1966 to 2015. The plucky little Lada even had celebrity fans. F1 champion Kimi Raikkonen had one as his first car and loved it so much he fully restored it. Considering all this, it can't be that bad, can it? Back in Russia, the Lada Riva is the most popular used car to this day, with many of the UK cars being re-exported and highly sought after due to the better spec of non-domestic cars. As for the subject of today's film, the car is no stranger to YouTube, having already featured on Steph's iDriver Classic channel, link in the description below, and is one of a fewer than 50 Lada Rivas currently registered on UK roads. It's a 1993 1500E with the 1.5 litre engine, and as we can see it's been subtly modified. Keep watching to find out what the owner Nathan has done to the car and why indeed he bought it. I'll also have the pleasure of giving the car a drive. Some 25 years after the UK sales have ended, could the Lada Riva now be the perfect first classic car? Let's hit the road and find out. Well, straight off is that exhaust pipe's clearly straight through.
Yeah, it is. It's from the manifold all the way back to just a single back box. It's a 3-inch system. Okay. So yeah, it's all Ladas should have sounded like this from the factory, but
well, most probably ran in rural Russia without their exhaust anyway.
yeah. You can imagine when you're doing 70 in this,
Yeah.
it's like driving an allotment shed.
Does it do 70?
I've had 70. In Mexico once I had 82. And that was down a big hill in fifth.
With a prevailing wind.
There was a wind behind me,
following wind,
and honestly,
yeah.
it wouldn't have gone much faster. But it seems like the gear in first, second, and third is quite low.
Yeah.
So
Okay, well, you took that corner quite sharply, and
yeah, well,
did it?
it's the lowered suspension does really help. Although, unfortunately, another factor. Well, you can hoon this if you do like to, because it's on 13 by 175s.
Okay.
So really thin, and they're decent tyres. They're Nankangs, but you can only hoon it in first or second. Other than that, it's just like driving a brick. It's yeah, any slight incline.
So it's being challenged at the moment by a slight incline. But you're willing it along. It's you want it to succeed.
It wants to succeed. It doesn't want to let me down and then me to sell it.
So it's quite a powerful engine, apparently. It was written in the
yeah, with a high performance 1.5 litre, 75 raging Russian horsepowers.
when new.
When new. Although it does have the Weber carb, so whether that actually does give it some more, it certainly feels quick.
Yeah.
But currently come on.
It sounds great. Like the exhaust does the trick.
I do like the sound of it, and I've grown to love carburetors more now due to just they're simple and the sound of it. But trying to get it going on a cold morning is usually a challenge. But I've put an electric fuel pump in.
Okay.
So as I said, I put modern electrics in, so now the heaters work. You know, you get hot and cold.
As best as they will. No Lada jokes.
No. It's got a modern Bluetooth Pioneer stereo. I've put modern Pioneer speakers within the original Lada speaker housing, so you can't see them. I said the horn works.
Can see.
Yeah, there's not much more I really want to do to it right now, other than chuck a bigger alternator on it, just because of the electric cooling fans. It's been a good daily. I've done over 2,000 miles in it, and I've had no problems. The only other thing I'm trying to deal with, as you can probably hear, a lot of rattles, because it's just...
Maybe this was a Friday car in the factory and not a Monday car.
Well, I don't think there's ever been a Lada that was built well. I think that was the Fiats and then, you know, Russia. But yeah. Yeah, it doesn't help the toy car mind, but yeah.
Well, that's a nice little touch. Okay, there was a bit of a rattle there, but I have to say, sat in the passenger seat, it doesn't feel slow. It feels quite nippy. Other than that little hill, and it was little, but
yeah, if you can keep going down hills and in the right gear, obviously the exhaust gives you the sense of feeling that it's faster than it is, and the speedo is out, so you think you're going faster than you are, but it's 10 mile an hour out due to the smaller wheels.
Okay.
But
the trade-off is they suit the car. They look good.
Yeah.
What's 10 mile an hour?
This for such a slow car and a weird car, it gets a lot of attention. I wouldn't have thought so when I bought it. So. It does draw a crowd. It's as we were saying earlier, people probably, as I wasn't around when these were on the road, and I've never actually seen another Lada in real life, but I knew what they were.
No.
And yeah, when I stumbled upon this, I loved it. It's a fantastic little car.
It's very likeable, to be fair.
What's the word?
But going back to the attention, even whilst we've been filming this in the past hour, how many times have we had to stop because people were stopping and I go, is that a Lada 1300? And Oh, the paintwork on that looks brilliant.
I haven't seen one of those in years.
Don't look too closely.
Oh yeah, it still rusts like any Lada. No matter how well you seem to paint these, or seam seal all the little welds, and it's going to rust. Well, that's what I've been told. I'm even expecting the little model on the dashboard to rust. Yeah, so
it's a hazard of filming, getting into a new car for the first time.
Oh yeah,
stalling.
Yeah, true.
So that was a result. Okay. So the steering is heavy. I know Jeremy Clarkson famously said that the steering felt like it was set in concrete.
Yes.
And at low speed like that, going around that roundabout, for sure, it did feel quite heavy.
I don't even go to the gym. This is just from having a Lada. But no, the steering is actually bearable. Like if you've had a car with no power steering before.
Yeah, so there's a bit of play now as we go in.
Oh yeah, so
I'm not moving anywhere.
In the owner's manual, it actually does say that there should be no more than 10 degrees of play in the steering, which when you look at it, is a lot.
Oh, well, so, I wasn't expecting this, but we've come across another vehicle in front that's slower than us.
Oh Christ. This doesn't happen very often.
No. But you know what? It's not a bad place to be.
It's surprising. I mean, I thought this would be a rot box, but the seats are dead comfy. It's just a bit, bit of a racket.
Yeah.
And as I said, every time I try and go somewhere, if I can avoid the motorway, because that means I don't have to do 60, it's more comfortable at 50. Even though it's got a 5-speed box, it's just more comfortable at 50. It just is.
It does wander a little bit.
Oh yeah.
You can tell straight away.
As I was saying about the aluminium brakes, they're just very spongy.
Yeah.
But
which I know there's a lot of ridicule with people saying, oh, the Russians took an Italian car that was decent and made it worse by taking the Fiat disc brakes off and putting on these aluminium drums. But that wasn't just because of the Soviet regime wanting to make life harder for everyone. There was an actual practical need for that, because the roads in Russia were that much worse and so full of snow and ice and stuff.
Yeah.
After a few hundred miles, apparently, the disc brakes would just clog up and not work. So they had to put drum brakes on,
And with obviously it's not a light car, so going down a hill, if you're riding, yes. It's if you're going downhill like this, you obviously, because it's quite heavy, it builds up quite a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
So I found. And
how heavy is it?
Well, with a full car, full tank, 5 people, it's over 1,500 kilos.
So the brakes are definitely preemptive.
Yeah,
definitely need to think ahead.
Oh yeah, I think because of this car, I've become a better driver, and also you can't get caught speeding in this.
Yeah,
it does sound like you're doing 100 everywhere, especially when you're in first or second. You have to pin it to accelerate. And it's an angry little red box. This is, because it's shouting all the time. But yeah, I like the simplicity. I like the fact I can do everything myself. Insurance is cheap, and it's different. Most of the questions I get are, I haven't seen one of them in years, or I used to have one of those, and it doesn't get old actually.
No.
And it is nice to see people, especially people who are older than me, let's say, when these were around, when they were...
Well, this car is older than you.
Yeah, it's older than me.
And that makes me feel old.
And but I think I've done more miles in myself as a human than the car, so...
But I don't really remember them being on the road. But you say, people stop and say, oh, I had one of them, and they were actually quite a common car.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s and 90s, I think, late 80s, they were selling over 30,000 a year.
I've heard that they were very popular, mainly because they were cheap.
Yeah.
Like, you could pick up one of these brand new for under £3,000, which is mad, because I paid more than that for this. It seems that considering they're the butt of many jokes, they're actually worth quite a bit now for a decent one. I just I didn't buy it for it to go up in value. I bought it just because I thought I like that.
Yeah.
And as I said,
it's comfortable. I have to say, it's. I just have to think ahead when I'm braking again. Just bear with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does like to veer to the left, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah.
But even the just bear with me. This is. Oh, am I in gear?
Nope.
There we go. Got there eventually. It does sound fab, and I know that's all down to the exhaust, but it's a fun little drive.
It is, yeah.
It's a fun little drive.
I drove it 4 hours home. That was the first time I had a proper trip in it when I bought it off Alan, 8-year-old man. I'll explain the story of how I bought it. So I wanted a C3 Corvette, or at least something American, just because I hadn't had anything like that, and why not?
Yeah.
You get hit by a bus tomorrow.
So that was going to be one thing I was going to ask, is you were looking for a Corvette, American muscle car, V8, and you've ended up with a Lada Riva.
Yep, and I have no regrets, thankfully.
But why? What was it about
I was
this car?
on a night shift looking at Facebook Marketplace. The search I put in was Corvette, and I was just scrolling down. There were quite a few, but you know what Facebook's algorithm is like, shall we say. I was scrolling down and I saw this, and there was one picture from the back, and I thought it was an E30 BMW, and I thought, well, that's a bit too cheap, $4,500 for what it looked like. And yeah, clicked on the image, and wow, I just loved it. It was different, it was quirky. I'd never seen one, but I knew what they were because of all the many jokes. And yeah, bless him, Alan, the bloke who I bought it off. I was the first one to message him, because I messaged him at 4:30 in the morning, just a few hours after the ad went live. And I was working night shifts, so he held off for everyone and let me come to see it, and he wanted someone who was an actual enthusiast to buy it, which is very understandable. Yeah. I gave him the full asking price. I wasn't even going to haggle. It was too good to knock him down.
You say it's charming, and it really is a charming little drive. And I suppose the question is, now that you've bought it, is it a keeper?
Definitely. Yeah, I would. Not many people in history have said I want a Lada. Not many people say that, because, well, on paper it's a bad car. It's slow, heavy, underpowered, but this is fantastic as long as I take care of it, which I plan to, and not let it rust. That's the main thing I've learned. Yeah.
Turning circle's not bad.
It isn't as bad as I thought it would be. It's just you have to...
Oh, you could definitely save yourself some money on the gym membership, couldn't you?
Oh yeah, definitely. Obviously everyone was a bit confused at why I bought a Lada, and then when I told them how much I paid for it, but until they see it, and...
You know what? A car like this is only going to go up in value now, I think. There's so few of them on the road, and it's of the moment. It's you know, it's what the younger kids are looking for these days, the retro cars.
Yeah, well, I paid $4,500 for this one. Now, granted, it is very low mileage. It's been well taken care of. It's a decent spec. I don't think they come in a spec, do they? But it's got the pleather door cards. It's got.
It's even got wipers on the headlights.
Wipers on the headlights.
Yeah. It's got windy windows.
Yeah, windy windows. My tone has completely changed. Not that I was against Ladas in the first place.
I went on your radar.
I just never been in one. I knew what they were, and I always thought they look. I like the look of them. I like old weird cars personally. But yeah, now that I have one, and if someone was looking to get into one, I would definitely recommend it. And it's not exactly a common car anymore.
No.
It really isn't, and it is quite nice, because people, when you go to a commie, they ask you questions, or they want you just sitting in it.
And that's what it's all about. I bought my first sort of, this was a second car, first foray into sort of retro classic car ownership, and as much as I love the car, it's not so much about the car, it's the people you get introduced to at car meets and shows, and ultimately the friends you make.
Yeah,
that's what classic car ownership is about.
I've met so many people, and as I said, at car shows, I let people sit in it. I leave it unlocked if they want to sit in it, or give it a rev, because it does sound fruity. It's just nice to see other people enjoy a weird rot box I bought. Yeah, it's something I would recommend to anyone if they do want a classic car that is easy to maintain. Cool. I know that's subjective, but yeah, it is pretty cool, I think, and most other people do.
Thank you very much for sharing the car with us.
It's my pleasure.
And let me drive it. There's no doubting that the Lada Riva was an outdated, utilitarian and flawed car even when new. Ultimately, the Soviet regime used Lada to bolster its failing economy. After all, 2/3 of Ladas were exported to foreign markets. But that doesn't mean that a little car like the Riva doesn't have a place. Even in countries like the UK, where the car offered a cheap route into car ownership. The Lada Riva also brings some cultural significance to the automotive world, both in its production longevity and bringing motoring and social mobility to the masses. Even though the car has a penchant for rust, like this one on the corner by there, it's a testament to the design and engineering of the car that even after all these years, there's so many of them around in Mother Russia and in far-flung places around the world. Here in the UK, the Lada Riva is gaining quite a cult following, and young car enthusiasts are seeing them as a gateway into classic car ownership. After experiencing it today, I really don't blame them, and I hope that we continue to see them on our roads in the years to come. As for the specific Lada Riva, the subtle modifications made really do bring the cool factor, and I can personally attest to seeing this car at local gatherings and the car getting much more attention than all the other cars on display. No, really, that's true. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and we'll see you soon. Yeah. Hello. You alright? Do a YouTube video based on the car. Landed on this video through some random YouTube algorithm. See, here we go. There's no doubt that the Lada Riva.
Oh, 1 second.
It's not plugged in. Audio check 1 2 3.